Hello. So this is going to be an annual thing that we do. We missed a year because of COVID and the program changing. The program's still changing. But what this talk is, it's a case study of a glimpse of our players, how they think with their routines on getting better with the game, a case study of how their progression is, a snapshot of where they are now. And since it's going to be annual, I think a lot of you are going to return, unless you're seniors. I don't think you're seniors. But you'll get to see how someone progresses with a mindset. And we're going to chapter this out on YouTube. We're going to talk about a bunch of different points that we think are relevant to you guys to, whatever state you're in. These guys have been in that state. You could be above their state and you can add into this. But overall, it's just a case study and a perspective of the best players that we have in our program. So we'll just go through a quick introduction of who we are, what game we play, kind of like our history of everything. I'll go first. My name is Troy Chifari. I've been running the esports program for around 5 years now. We've been competing for around 4 years. We've gone back and forth of having 11 games to now 4 games. My background was coaching League of Legends. Did amateur for a bit, maybe teetered with maybe going pro, got married instead, colleges started hiring, and I came here and now I coach. I thought I was going to end up coaching a bunch of gold players, but these guys are definitely not gold. And the average for our varsity teams are like in the 1% for all our games. So it is a competitive program, and it seems to just be getting better each year. So these talks that are going to be annual are going to get better each year as well. So quick intro, let everyone know who you guys are.
Okay, so my name's Kyle. I'm here studying pharmaceutical business and healthcare administration. I currently play Valorant. I'm a Radiant Peak, and I've been playing Valorant for about 2 years now. And I just want to get better to pursue my opportunities going pro and make my dreams come true.
I'm Jake Rapelli. I am studying mechanical engineering here at ONU. I play Rocket League. I'm a GC3, Grand Champion 3. I've been playing since like 2016, but I played on and off for a lot. And then over like the past 2 years, I started playing more and more competitively. I want to get better just because I want to be at the top of my game and play at like the top rank, and it's really fun to play collegiate. And yeah, that's kind of all.
I'm Harry. I'm studying computer science, and I play Overwatch 2. I am currently Grandmaster 2, and I've played since March of 2021. And I want to get better because, it's fun, and I can.
All right.
My name's Kyle Teckington. I am a junior and or sophomore computer science major. I took an off semester last spring to attempt and go pro in League of Legends. I peaked GM, but I've been minuscule wins off of Challenger a few times. I've played League for too long. I started playing League when I was in elementary school. At the time, it was just for fun. But eventually, I decided to actually give it a shot and try to make the pro, play competitively. That was about 3 years ago at this point. That was about right when I exited high school and decided to come to ONU. And the main reason I decided to follow that path was, I was kind of just good without trying at one point. And then I decided, hey, I'll give it a shot. It's fun. I like beating people. I like winning. And here we are.
So I think with the beginning of this conversation, there's a point where, I know for me, and I think you guys will agree too, there's a point where you're playing for fun. You started playing whatever game. Like, we could go through the story of like what got you into gaming. Everyone has their story, but we'll just skip that. Everyone has that. Everyone that's watching is going to have that as well. But there's a definite change of like, you're playing for fun. You don't have a goal. You're just playing with your friends, but you're playing a game that is competitive, and you start to see that inkling of you can get better. It feels good to get better. I want to beat people. I don't want this guy that got me into this beating me anymore. Now, you can go ahead and skip that story of like what got you into that grind mindset. Start talking about how those initial changes were and how playing the game looked different. So I know there's a lot of case studies where it's like, you'll see a pro saying they played for fun. They used to play with a group of friends, and they started to see, if I keep playing with my friends, I'm not going to get better. and it takes the fun out of the game. So if you can go into that, like the difference between fun and grinding, and I think the peak harmony point is if you can still have fun and grind, but most days might not feel like that, right? So just go, whoever wants to go first.
I'll take it. Since I've played League since elementary school, I played with friends at the time. I played with my brother. The only issue with that is he's also good, so that doesn't help. But we had, obviously, League's 5 people, so we had a group of 5 friends that would play all the time, and that's the only time we would play League, is when all 5 of us would get on. But at the point when I started to switch from for fun to actually trying to improve and grinding for a purpose to get better, that's when I started to see myself slipping away from playing with them. Even if they were on at that point, it's like, is it worth my time to even play with them? Like,
what was the trigger of going from fun to serious?
I mean, for me, it was, I hit D1 just for fun. And I was like, oh shoot, maybe I should try and see how far it can take me. Also coming here, like committing here, is kind of what flipped that trigger.
Yeah.
Then,
was it like the sense of having a team and wanting to be good on that team, or what?
Yes. When I don't have a team, it's hard to keep the motivation flowing unless you're very, very self-motivated and there's like a distinct purpose as to why you need to improve. But I think unless you have people around you pushing you, it's difficult.
Yeah.
Unless some of you guys feel the same way.
Yeah.
But it also helped, I guess. I wouldn't say it was good, but the two knee surgeries pushing me out of what I was doing, playing soccer, and then seeing like, oh shoot.
But I'm sure if you would talk about the soccer thing, there was probably a point in soccer where it's like you're for fun, and then you take soccer, because like most of everything we talk about, you guys are all from different games. A lot of it's going to carry over, and you're going to see a lot of head shaking. Like, yeah, I feel that. There's going to be some of that happens. But no, it is a bummer that you get a physical injury. But at least with esports, there's still that realm of competitiveness. Yeah, and you can still enter it the same way I think athletes do as well. Like with me, somewhat the same story with breakdancing, and then I wasn't young enough to go into esports when my breakdancing career ended, but it's still the same like mindset. It's like you still want to perform for the same reasons. You still want to beat the same opponent. Like you want to just be better for whatever reason. You want to be better. Yeah. For fun to grind. Anyone else?
I'd say like personally, like it was originally fun. I played with my friend a lot in high school, and we'd been playing together. We played soccer together, and then we played Rocket League a ton. And then it got to the point where we were like diamond, and it became a competition of like who was better than the other. And we started like competing against each other. And then even though the game was still fun, it was like, I need to get better. I need to improve. And then I started taking it more seriously to try and just like get to a higher rank, to just be slightly above him. And then coming to ONU, I was like, oh, I could be a part of a team. I could be a part of something here. I'm somewhat good enough. I'll like designate more time to this and like take it more seriously.
Do you get motivated the same way as Kyle with like the in-person team being like a boon to I want to try harder?
Yeah.
I think a big thing also is just having that friend.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people forget about it when it comes to when they like, I don't want to say like evolve over their first group.
Yeah.
It's like they don't think about just making friends with people in the game and using them as like that next stepping stone. I don't want to say you're just using them, but just still be friends with them.
In that same evolution path?
Well, it's like, okay, let's say my friends from high school, I got better than them quick. I think I made this mistake where I didn't try to find people and like ranked to
in that same like step that you're in.
And like bounce off of them, and like I said, you can use them as a stepping stone. And like you had motivation from your friend, and like that, like from our teams we get that now. But still on the team, it can be hard because they're not at the exact same place individually, even though they're in the same group. So like I said, I think I very rarely used it, and I found that out eventually, but it could have helped me out to realize that more earlier for sure.
I think I also had that sort of thing because with my game, my friend group like went between games and like swapped between them a lot, and they played Overwatch for about a week, and that was the first time I played it. But then I really liked it because it was like a team-based game that I felt I was good at because I could swing the hammer behind and I didn't have to aim because I always thought my aim was bad. So I thought I was good, so I kept on playing it a bit, and only like a few of them would play with me. And even though those guys like stopped playing eventually, so I think that's a bit different between me and you guys because, to be honest, they sort of stopped playing. It wasn't that I outranked them, at least right away. And then I sort of just got better on my own, but like I never really found other people to play with. So it's sort of just me and trying to like get better. Then they would like occasionally play again. I'd be like, oh, they're a lot worse than I remember. That's just because I wasn't as good. And then the people that I originally thought were like gods among my friends, I'm like, can hardly play with anymore because. So
then, what's the driver now?
Well, I think right around when I hit like diamond or so, I think that was when I came to ONU, and I think I was starting to like plateau with my current mentality, and I wanted to just know how to get better, and I didn't really know. And then God sent me Jarno.
I guess for me it was that I always, when I would play the game, there was always people higher ranked than me, and I always hated the way people treated you, like the ego that they just gave off and the negative energy that people gave. So I just wanted to be the change in everyone's ranked experience. So for me, it was always taking everything with a grain of salt, figuring out why what the other person's doing is better, and then learning from it, and then positively like implementing it, telling people, like coaching people, whatever it was. And then eventually it just so happened I climbed far enough to hit top rank. And I mean, there's still more learning to happen because there's more steps to going pro than just hitting top rank. So I guess it's still trying to find like stepping stones.
So you wanted to be that, like in that same evolutionary process, you wanted to be that light in the one that's above, not just talking down to the one below.
Exactly.
And that motivated you to just keep getting better.
Yep, exactly.
That's a cool one.
I can't say I've ever felt that.
Yeah, that's pretty unique.
There's like
Yeah.
no one's like that. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe you're destined to be a coach one day with that
Those
mindset.
are the real MVPs though. You
Yeah.
run into the ranks,
Yeah, I
they're
think I felt-
boosting you up. That was like, thank you. But like,
Yeah.
man, I'm just so used to everyone else being
One
toxic.
out
I
of
think I felt
200.
inspired.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, you still have those like bad days where it's like, man, like I'm just like not in a really good mood. But like overall, it's like I have way more positive days than bad days, and I like to take that with a grain of salt. and
What
stuff.
about just the selfishly though? Like the you wanting to get better outside of like you affecting others.
I think like just me personally, it's just more of a like trying to prove everyone wrong, I guess, because like I come from a place where I got made fun of for it. Everyone was like, esports, like it's nothing. You're just wasting your life, and
Yeah.
blah blah blah. And next thing you know, I'm in college. I'm getting a degree still. I'm doing what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
But I'm getting more known with esports than like a lot of people I went to school with who made fun of me, who are just working a 9-to-5 job, just
Yeah.
being a basic person. No offense to
And see,
anyone.
you get to say that now, like your generation of this is like the baby mode of you're getting some things, you're getting a little bit, there's some progress, some path with it.
Mhm.
That only gets better. And you guys are going to be like the alumni that help have that be better for people. And then like me being old, I can say the same thing. And I can say like in school, there was nothing, you know, I wasn't put in like a bad situation where someone's criticizing me and judging me, but to the point of the story is like, it's just getting better. And you guys are like at the big hump where like a lot of people are going to be accepting this.
I thought esports in college was there, and then I come here and people are like, yeah, my high school I have this, and I was like,
Yeah, it's going to grow. I mean, I met someone from East Canton, wherever East Canton High School is, and they had like 300 middle schoolers playing
Wow.
Fortnite, Overwatch, and Rocket League.
Dang.
Yeah, so I mean, it's going to keep getting bigger. And I think if we just like, that's another point with this video is like, I plan on having freshmen watching this, and they're just, well, incoming freshmen
Yeah.
watching this.
when I'm older.
Yeah, like, I mean, when you're talking, talk as if you're talking to you coming into the school and like, I want to help you be really, really good. Like, imagine you're talking to a DPS player coming into your team. You're like, what can I say to you to make you get really good over summer? That's the point of all this. So talk about your guys's, what changed? Like you go into the grind set, you're past the for fun, you're entering like, I'm try harding. You're maybe starting to get towards the Sigma grind of like, I'm going to try really hard and like, it's going to be my main thing that I do. what changes in your daily, your routine, short-term, long-term goals, benchmarking yourself, using the judgment of other people to judge you, and like, how's that going to affect you getting better? Because there's all kinds of things you can take, and just talk about the things you're using and what you're doing for yourself now.
I'd say personally, like when I made the switch, I used to, when I was playing for fun, it was just like I'd get on and I'd hop right into comp. Like I didn't warm up or anything. It was just because it was fun. I didn't really care that much.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started kind of like setting up like a warm up routine, and I'd like do kind of like just practice my mechanics and stuff just to like get warmed up and get ready for like when I was in a game situation, and I'd play a lot better, and I saw a drastic improvement in like my skill after that as well.
Go into the warm up. Like I'm sure everyone will have somewhat of a warm up, right? And you guys can just like add on with this. I mean, yeah, there could be a straight up no. But I'm sure someone watching is going to be curious about like, am I doing enough? Do I need to start doing something? Whatever. Like, so what's your warm up? Is it a specific thing, or does it change?
It changes, but like one thing I kind of set up like over the summer coming into ONU, I would spend like the first 10, 15 minutes just practicing like car control, because that's like a huge part of Rocket League. And then I'd spend like 5 minutes doing shooting, 5 minutes doing like recoveries, and then just kind of like 5 minutes of, I wouldn't call it limit testing, but like, because in Rocket League, there's a training arena, you just kind of dribble the ball around the field. But what you do is just like you kind of just go as fast as you can. You try and play faster than you would like warming up, just to try and like imagine yourself in a fast-paced game scenario. So that way it's like a smooth transition into playing.
Yeah.
But like you're not like going for things that you wouldn't normally go for. It's just like you're doing things a little bit faster.
And who's like, do you think it's all on you, like you personally, to benchmark if you're getting better? Like, how do you know if you're getting better?
I mean, in Rocket League, it's kind of easy to tell because like you can like mechanics are pretty obvious, and then like your rank may or may not go up, but like you feel smoother, like your landings are cleaner, like you're just more efficient. And like for me, I was like, I just feel faster, I feel better. I can tell that I've improved.
And I think to counter off that, like there's going to be games where it's like you can kind of tell, it's kind of like an intuition. It's kind of like a habit that you kind of sense about yourself. But I think with some other games that are here, it's very direct. I think one of the direct ones would be League. So like some aspects where like you're training, you're warming up. What are some of those direct things that you're like, I'm training this on purpose. I'm benchmarking myself this way. How do you know? How do you know you're getting better?
This can go a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Based on position, rank, how long you played the game. I don't know, should I talk about my specific role, or should I talk in general? Like,
you can do that year specific to where it's like super detailed. Because I'm sure anyone that's playing League, like they're not playing AD carry, but they know what AD carry is.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to be like, these make sense, right?
So I would say the direct is like direct improvements that you could like benchmark, or
Yeah.
I mean, the most common ones would be CS numbers for low elo ADCs, even up until like GM. I think a lot of people have issues with CSing, not just in lane as well, but also out of lane. I think you can easily set benchmarks because you have the in-game timer.
Yeah.
You can be like, okay, I know when I first started to actually think about improving, it was like, okay, at 10 minutes, I want 75 CS. And that's not great, but it's better.
Yeah.
It's better than what, like 65.
It was like a realistic benchmark for you,
Yeah,
right?
And like if I'm playing now, it's obviously I want to aim for 10 at 10 or more, but 100 at 10 or more. But you also have to take into account, okay, these could change based on game state. You know, some games you're not going to be allowed to. I think that's kind of an indirect.
Yeah, and that's when I don't want to
work on.
interrupt, because eventually you're going to talk about like, I'm learning this thing, I'm timestamping it, I have this benchmark.
Mm-hmm.
But then in a competitive game, you're pressured. Those benchmarks become different. Like, yeah, you're getting better at that thing, but whatever's pressuring you is going to be the next thing that you work on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of jumps into awareness on a lot of games, is that you can always set benchmarks and be like, oh, I should be able to do this, this, and this, but realizing that in that certain game state, you're not allowed to. And you're not going to know this unless you make the mistake of trying it first and then being like, oh, shoot, okay, if this happens, I can't do X. But
there's going to be a resource you're missing or a champion or character that's counter to you. So they're going to pressure you more, or you can counter them and you should be pressuring them more. So you should be going like over your benchmark.
I think the only way to really know these things is just trying it and failing. But also I think pointing into that you should be getting more is a lot harder to reach or a lot harder to like touch than it is to be like, oh, I should be doing less, if that made sense. So
Try to
like,
explain it. So
let's say I'm in a certain matchup in league and ideally you'd be getting more pressure, more CS, more money than them. You might think you're playing it at the best possible like way, right?
But there's a bigger window for you to get better.
There is, but
then there is
it's
the window
not,
that you need to do less because they're pressuring.
well, I think it's hard to realize that window unless you're really, really cognitive.
And you've tapped into it before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I think it's similar in like, it's probably most similar in Overwatch in my opinion than the other two games. It's like, it's hard to know if you can do more without knowing that you've done it before.
Based off like the matchup.
Yeah. Like if you like, same with Rocket League, I feel like if you're in like a 1v2, sometimes people are gonna be like, there's no way I'm winning that. But if you've done it before, you're like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
Like I've done it before, I can do it again. It's like, I think, I'd rather give a specific example for League where it's like, let's say I'm playing Draven bot into Vayne. If you go even in that lane, some people might be like, oh, I'm surviving, like that's good. But based on what you're playing, you should be up at least 50 CS at 10 minutes if you're playing it correctly, in my opinion. So it's just, I don't know, League's hard to talk about.
Yeah, and like and to put it in a general sense, is like if you're going to be pushing the agenda, getting better, limit testing, you're going to know these windows of opportunity to be better than the person.
Which is why limit testing is important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that becomes like part of, what you're realizing you need to learn. That's for sure. But we kind of strayed a little bit from like, how do the days look different? Like, I guess that's the easiest and like the most applicable to someone listening is you're not for fun gaming anymore. You're sitting down. Give an example of like a day or a lesson plan or something you went through where it's like, you're doing the grind correctly.
I mean, I can just like emphasize more on like I'd play like my warm up routine, and then I would play I was either like a rank goal, or if I was like I wasn't playing great and maybe my rank wasn't going up, but I was still like playing the game. Like those hours are still very valuable, and I was just like I'd set like I want to play till like this amount of time, and then towards the end, once I'm like at the end of my session, that's when I do like a lot of more of like limit testing. Like I'd go to training, I'd try things that I haven't done, because like if you try and do that beforehand, you might end up like not playing as well during your grinding hours or like grinding time.
Yeah.
And then that's detrimental to your like improvement versus like saving for the end where it's like a low risk, high reward kind of situation.
And when I have a conversation similar to what you're saying now, I usually talk about like when you're going to sit down and grind for the day, you have a limited amount of focus hours, and especially for you guys juggling other stuff, like juggling school, life, maybe other play where you want to like not focus too hard on this because you have a scrim or something like that. But point is, you have your day, you're going to start learning yourself how much time you can focus and when you go brain dead afterwards. Now, I would argue that like you can put a lot of time and focus in, and I think you should be playing during the brain dead time, because you're going to take some of that focus and then you're going to push it into your brain dead habit. And if you can build that brain dead habit to be at a really, really high level of play, then your focus gets to go higher and you just keep stacking that. I think other people may feel differently. Maybe you guys do, but maybe just talk about like in Valorant. You're probably someone that's pretty cognitive on, I'm going to focus real hard for these games, because you're also the person that will like tilt queue and stuff like that. So there's probably some sense that's true that you do this on purpose of like, I'm going to put the focus gameplay in. What does that look like? And what does the habitual brain off gameplay look like?
So I think for me, like the brain on gameplay, it's just like, it's like a good warm up, making sure I'm like hydrated, making sure I'm like ready to actually play. I normally do before matches or like before playing ranked or scrims or whatever. I'll like watch a VOD, get my brain thinking like, okay, like what are these players thinking of? Like what are they seeing and how are they identifying these
Would
problems?
the VOD be specific to something you're learning, or do you let it just be like open-ended? The VOD's going to show you something and then you work on that.
I think I just let it be open-ended. So like a lot of the matches are just like pro matches that happen and like I just see something and I just work on it for that day. And then when I go into live matches, I just play until like that like brain dead time happens. And then when normally that happens, I just get on an alt account and that's when I just subconsciously just queue and like I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna like find my flow state. I'm just gonna work on like aiming or just trying to like get first bloods or whatever. Like I just go into a game like even though I'm tilted or maybe I'm just like not thinking, it's like I have this goal. I'm just gonna keep doing this goal and eventually I'll see progress.
Would you say what I'm saying is true, that in your focus time, there's an opportunity to focus on like very specific things that you can't focus on during the brain off time?
Yeah, I would agree.
And those things would be like a more macro sense, a more awareness sense.
Yeah.
And maybe in those opportunities where brain's off is like you can heavy grind the mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's any time where you can heavy grind like your sense of things? Like let's say you're paying attention to like some kind of util that's happening so you can use it, or using yours for a certain reason, like something outside of like the aiming and mechanics and placement of the game, I guess.
I mean, I think so. Like you could like, I mean, like learning how to use utility better is always like a key part to the game. So I guess like,
But can you do that in brain off time?
yeah, I mean, that's just watching videos and like going into custom games and just putting in server hours is what I call it. So it's just when you're not competing or you're not playing ranked or anything, it's just you are learning the game, like learning to get better.
I think it's weird because awareness is a skill that you should be able to brain off, in my opinion. Otherwise, you're not gonna be able to like communicate.
It's like you have to, because that's kind of what awareness is. You shouldn't have to like actively think about what am I aware of.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be
It just
visualized.
happens.
Yeah.
That's why it's like I think awareness is made up of everything you end up picking up and then putting into your brain off. Like that is technically your awareness besides your mechanics. But then again, awareness plays into mechanics, in my opinion. Like if you don't have good awareness, your mechanics are gonna be terrible. It's just how it works.
Because you're not
Like
going
going
to
up for a
when
Rocket
to
League
do the
challenge and
mechanics.
like I don't have enough boost to go. It's just like you got to be aware of your boost, the opponent's boost, and everything like that.
Yeah.
Be aware of their position. Can you actually make it? Like, are you just like throwing darts in the dark because you're like, oh, I think I can make it. Like, no. Like,
Or you'll double up or something like that.
Yeah.
so it's
Or you'll go too far ahead on tank. Yeah.
So it's weird because ideally you have to think about these things first before it becomes practicing awareness, like in brain off, because that's just what's made up of.
I bet there's most likely an example you can say for playing tank.
I'm thinking like probably the best example would just be being aware of the enemy's alt charge and then your own. So you know like the alt economy for both teams. You know if you can like push in on something hard or if you should be ready to like kite out of like an enemy using an alt or something like that.
Try to come up with an example playing tank and like recently where it's like it's something you're doing by habit now. You don't have to think about it. You just like know this is when I should be doing it, and it just happens because you know, right? But beforehand, you didn't know. You had to actively think about it. You had to push it into something you're commonly doing.
Being aware of my teammates and knowing like when we have to like give up a fight, like because before I never really would, and now I have to watch my teammates, make sure we're even. And I can also like see if we can win a fight, even if we're down one, based on if like the enemy has used a ton of cooldowns. But just knowing when you can and should attempt to win a fight, or when you should just back up and reset is something.
And like you said, a bunch of different like knowing their cooldowns, their teammates are down. Like there's a bunch of different like bullet points and factors of like, okay, this equals we pull back. Now, when you were learning when the pullback is, were you heavy focusing on each one? How were you overcoming like learning that lesson?
Well, it was just in the beginning, it was sort of like we would keep on losing when like something happened, and I started to like pick up on it, and then I would sort of focus on it. And then I remember the first one I started to focus on a lot was alt charge. So I knew like, because like on Ryan v Ryan or something, then like you can block shatter, and then or like shatter them yourself or something like that, and then I started to be aware of like focusing on Ryan's shield health when I have shatter, because then if we like push that down, then I can Shatter 5 for free.
And is this
It
you
just
just
keeps on.
noticing it in game?
It's just me noticing in game and me
You doing
starting.
any extra?
Well, after like a few times I started to notice it, then I started to like actively like look for these things
How?
by seeing.
Like the VOD are still just like in the moment
Oh.
in game, like repping games out and then paying more
It's
attention. as you're-
definitely voting was definitely more helpful for it, but in game is when I sort of like would first notice it, and then I'd be.
But you're
so-
trying to notice it. Like you're putting extra effort into that, and maybe you're ignoring other things.
Yeah, like and once I notice it in game, I can look for stuff in VODs and see if it like lines up or if it was just like a one-off thing.
Yeah. And I think that's the point I'm trying to push here is like when you're going through a lesson and you're trying to like really focus on this thing you didn't focus on before, you have to focus. And when you're focusing on that, you're regressing on other things that you need to focus on later. And you're also somewhat regressing on the things that you already learned, especially things that you learned recently. So let's say you have like 5 lessons, you get a little bit better at 1, you move on to 2, and like 3, 4, and 5 are still there, and you're getting worse with that because you're focusing on the second lesson, and the first one regresses a little bit. I think, does anyone have examples of like you need to become comfortable with that and know that you're still pushing towards it's going to work out in the end goal? Because I think a lot of people, they'll be in like, I know all these lessons I could be looking at. Do you guys agree you have to heavy focus on the one, or can you do all of them at once?
It depends on the person, I feel like, because
Yeah.
like some things also like depends on the game. Like some mechanics are like so much more like serious that when you are focusing on it, you are losing out on a lot less. But there's some that are like more minor where you can still play like at a high level. It's just like you're slowly adjusting to that as well.
Yeah, and as you repeatedly go through all these lessons, and sometimes going through them again, like to just raise that level for that specific lesson, you don't regress as hard.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think there's times where, like especially I think when you enter like really, really high rank, if you're going to regress on anything, just because any small game that you get at a really high rank has a high rank difference.
Yeah.
So let's say like, I know each of your games at least have some kind of MMR. Let's say like 3K is the highest. And let's say you're sitting at like 2K MMR. Like to go from 2K to 2.5, it's a lot less amount of lessons than it would be to go from like 1.2K to 2K. Like 1.2K to 2K, huge lessons, huge difference. You learn this one big lesson, big jump. But like 2K to 3K, you do a very minor thing and you'll see a rise. It's a very insignificant rise because it's just points for you guys at that time. It's not like gold to plat or something.
Yeah.
Now, when you go through those lessons again, you may see someone go from like 2.2K to 1.8 because they're focusing on something so heavily. Let's say like your aim or some kind of mechanic or something, you're just going to drop. Anyone? This is just a theory I think is true. Do you guys have any like real stories of that?
Like, I mean, personally, I might be a little bit different because so coming into at ONU, I started watching a bit of like pro play and stuff, and I saw that like they used right air roll in Rocket League, and I was just using free air roll, but like a lot of people did both. So I ended up having to change my binds, and like I had to learn right air roll and unlearn free air roll in order to like learn it. So I like could tell that I was like playing a lot worse because it was just like I had to learn.
Your
something.
rank just went down.
My rank went down. Like I could tell that I was playing worse, but like once I was able to actually like learn the right air roll, and then I like shot right back up because all the things that I was missing because I didn't have right air roll down, I was able to now hit, and I just like went higher than I was before.
Yeah.
Like I switched my binds.
And that's like the whole talk of like discipline is a real thing you have to have because if you're not disciplined, you're in that state of like, I'm doing worse,
Yeah.
but I'm focusing more and I'm putting more energy into it. I should be getting better. And if you're thinking in a simple way, very simple, I'm focusing, I should get more rank. I think a lot of people tick that way.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't have the discipline to know it could work out after I learned this lesson, you could just be discouraged and quit,
Yeah.
right? Like anyone entered that zone?
I can provide like an example for like maybe not quitting, but another example for like the previous thing.
Yeah,
But,
go for it.
like how last season in season 3 of Overwatch 2, I had jumped between like Masters 3 and Diamond 3 like 5 times in a row because I remember I was trying to learn Diva. I was trying to get better at Sigma. I was trying to do like 5 separate things and trying to learn how to not feed as much and stuff like that. So I kept on like going up and down. And at the time, I just thought it was pretty crazy that I kept on doing that. But then this season, I went from, Masters like 4 I finished last season to now I'm GM2. So like I was bouncing between 2 ranks, and now I'm more than a rank higher than I was peaking last season. So.
And you're saying those regressive states where it's like you were dropping, you're just learning new stuff.
Yeah.
And now that after you've learned the new things, you're like coasting and able to rise again.
Yeah, I spent like the entire season learning new things, and then like immediately the next season, like I go way beyond how I ever could before. So.
Okay, so now go into your long-term goal and the steps you're taking to reach it. Like we've gone kind of all over the place with like the daily, the weekly, different lessons, how that looks and whatnot. But you get it. Like you have a goal in mind. You have a reason why you're playing, why you're getting better. And you could just be coasting because it feels good to coast like this, but you could have that ultimate thing. And how is that changing your day-to-day, week-to-week?
I can start off. I think ultimate goal, like right now, I'm not that close to it, but I know I'm a lot closer than I was like even just a year ago. But eventually to hit rank 1 on tank, that's what I want to do. And to do that, I know that there's some things I have to do that I don't necessarily find like nearly as fun as everything else. Like botting, I'd never botted before because I just thought it was boring. But I know now that I have to because there's a lot more minor stuff that I have to improve on that I can't see while in game. And having to sacrifice some parts of my game, like so it's a bit less fun so I can get better at it. So because, it's in the long term, it'll also be more fun if I'm better at it. So.
Yeah, but it's a different. Would you say it is a different kind of fun? Like
it's a different kind of fun. It's more like it's fun because I'm good at it, and that because I'm better than other people.
You enjoy the grind. You enjoy the
it.
progression of it. You enjoy the lessons of it.
Like playing at a high level is
Yeah.
just like generally fun, like being in those intense situations.
But you guys are definitely like there's going to be people who have not entered your state of fun yet, so they don't know what it is. So I'm just trying to like double up and explain that it definitely is different. It's not the fun you came into your game with.
I think it's almost never gonna be like
Never going to be what it was before.
No.
Yeah.
When you first join a game, it's fun because it's fun.
It's
like,
new, it's fun.
New, it's
You're playing with
exciting.
your friends.
You're playing with friends, finding out new things. It's a good time. It's probably possible that there's somebody that'll still have fun, and it's just a god at the
Have
game.
fun playing the game.
But it's like there are times where we'll have fun. Like I don't know, you ace solo Valorant. Fun. I don't know, dude. Probably sounds fun to me.
Yeah.
5-man shatter.
5 minutes. Exactly my thought.
Yeah, like I've had that before when I was playing Overwatch, and I'm like gold, and I'm like, holy crap, bro! Like I'm that guy.
Yeah.
And it's just like same with Rocket League. You have those moments.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hit a crazy clip or something.
Ceiling shot, like flip reset.
I'm
stuff like
ecstatic after it happened. Like, oh.
Yeah,
But those moments have a
Stand on your
huge.
chair.
Those moments have a huge prerequisite, right? You're not going to hit definitely at like a high level of competitiveness.
Mhm.
You're not going to do that really pop off thing and perform if you didn't put a lot of time beforehand. And
that's
the fun beforehand in that prerequisite is
might not be fun for more than half the people watching this, let alone half the people playing the game still.
Mhm.
It's like you have to be able to find the fun and just the grind and improving if you ever want to hit the high ceiling, in my
or
opinion.
at least playing for the moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, you want to hit those clips, okay. You have to put in the work. You have to try your best to figure out what's going wrong before you can even think about doing that. I think that's where a lot of people like misstep, is that they're like, oh, I want to do this, but then you ask them, okay, how are you going to go about that?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, like I said, maybe somebody can just do it.
Yeah.
They'll figure it out. Like they're just not thinking. They're like, done. Like I did it. How do you do it? I don't know, but I did it.
Yeah.
But then most people need to think about what are the steps to get to this ultimate goal, or at least they don't even need all the steps laid out to that point. They just need a starting point. It's like, and I think self-reflection is where a lot of people are misstepping as well, is that they don't figure out how to look at themselves and be like, what am I doing wrong? I think that's where pro play can also come in.
Do you think anyone gets through it, you guys or anyone that you know of, can get those lessons by not self-reflecting and getting it from someone else always? Or
no.
you have to self-reflect?
Like
So-
from a coaching standpoint, like if
From
like a coach
any-
told
like
me something I
any
did
other
wrong.
person, because like just a sense of your own bubble and self-reflecting and getting better within you telling yourself, I need to get better, work on this.
It depends
then-
on your end goal. No?
Also, like I feel like a lot of times you'll hit a wall of
Yeah.
like either like I know in Rocket League I could like go for things that were like pretty cool and they might have worked in like champ, but I get to like grand champ and there's people that are just like shutting me down instantly, and I'm like, I gotta improve like this in order to be able to continue to do that.
And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to prove the point that you have to also do it on your own. No matter what resources you have to help you, coach, VODs, YouTube, streams, anything, friend, you don't get there without being very serious on your own and being really accountable on your own as well. Because I know there's people in this program, you guys probably have people on your team that we talk to in Amnesty Hours, where you know that just hasn't clicked yet. It's, they think someone else isn't doing enough for them. They think they don't have to try hard enough on their own and be really mad at their mistakes. And there's some people that don't even think they're making mistakes. They're just like, maybe they don't care, they're not self-reflecting. They'll be way more on the end of blaming others than being accountable to yourselves. But I think you guys, part of the reason why I chose you for this is you do understand that you have to, for the most part, like if you put it percentage-wise, very high majority, it is just on your own, right?
You can have a coach, but you're the only one that knows that's going on in here. So
Yeah, and like talk a little bit with that because you're the only one in here that has a coach. It's the fault of the program, but you're able to have me there a good amount of the time. I'm able to have what I can do, what I can't do. You talk to other people that have had coaches, and you're able to see what that coach does compared to what I do. But at the same time, you do most of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it's weird because up to a certain point, like we always talk about, it's like you can only help up to a certain point when it comes to individual skills and like mechanics, and that's for the most part just been me. Like I can bounce ideas off of you, which I think is great. That's probably where it would help. Like it kind of sucks for you guys, but
You gotta have a little bit.
I got you up.
yeah, you guys can figure out. But
Bounce ideas off myself.
Yeah,
bounce
that's
ideas
not
off
all I got
yourself,
over
maybe
here.
your
Yeah.
teammates if it like plays out that way, but that's not always going to be the best case scenario because sometimes they might not have your best interest in mind, like your coach might.
And like we said at the start of all this, the being here in person adds something. Like it adds the will to want to have that drive. It definitely has a huge effect.
Yeah. Like I see the league team winning a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, oh, that seems fun. I want to do that. I don't have trophies. That's cool. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if this fits, but I kind of want to talk about when I got the offer from SLU, and they offered to give me full ride, but I would be in like online, and that was a big turnoff for me. It's like, okay, cool, I'm not paying for school, but I'm just sitting alone in Ohio in my house, and I take classes online, and then I just stay on my computer and that's practice as well, It's just,
But that's the majority of the programs that are
I know, and
high
I think
up too, yeah.
if you can find a way to stay motivated in the situation is great. But the fact that I know a lot of people in those programs, like when they go to like these LAN events, it's a big motivation booster. Like they just get this flame just kindled inside of them. But it'll dissipate because of the fact that they just don't have that enough, I guess.
Yeah,
You wanna talk
we get
about
like a baby sense of it like all the time
Yeah.
because we have our facility, we're with our team all the time.
Mhm.
And like even just like on the bad days, like the bad days have way more of effect than we think because like if you're gonna get mad at someone's gonna get mad at you, the team's gonna have a fit on something. That's a good day in the hindsight long run of it because you have people that care enough to get mad. Now online, you just don't get to see that. You just you boil up for a long time. It's just it's such a complicated thing to actually explain. But the simple things we get, like you have camaraderie, you have the people pushing each other, like-minded type people. it is weird here, and it's weird at a lot of other schools. I mean, we scout other teams, and we'll see like an Immortal playing with Irons. We're like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
We at least have the benefit of like most people on your team are close.
Yeah.
So you're not in like the really bad state, and we're not online. So we're at least in a good little harmony spot. Anyone want to counter off? Do you all have like pretty similar long-term goals, like just want to get really, really good on your own? Someone with a different goal that they want to share, and like any change to how you're handling that?
I did want to talk about, it's kind of like retracing back to, do you like have to be self-reflective to improve? And I think I was gonna say earlier, it kind of depends on what your end goal is. Because you could have somebody just take your hand and walk you to the finish line.
Yeah.
If the finish line is reasonable.
Yeah.
But like, you're the only one that's going to be with you 24/7, and no one's going to be able to help you all the time. And if they are, I don't know what they're doing with their life, but it's kind of like there's going to be a point. Like, if your goal is to be one of the best, there's going to be a point where no one can help you anymore but yourself. And I think for the most part, there's also going to be a point, even if you're not the best of the best, that you're not going to find someone to help you.
Yeah.
Like, relying on people is okay sometimes, but it can backfire heavily. And if that's where your success is coming from, it's, I don't know, it can shoot you in the foot real quick.
And when you get to the upper echelons of like whatever it is, like upper echelon here, upper echelon of pro, upper echelon of whatever, like high school, you'll have someone that can always guide you, but to actually get up there, it really is.
Does just
pure
rely on you.
independent. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're not going to put in the work, nothing's going to happen. And it's like, if someone wants to point out your issues and you have the work to fix them, great. But like I said, eventually that's going to come back to bite you, because you're going to plateau eventually. No one's going to be able to help you.
And I think most of you have examples of even people on your team here. And you probably know of examples when I would like puppet somebody, like I'm getting them to do the things that they need to be at their top performance. Or you guys are doing that for a teammate, or someone else is doing it, helping out. You see those examples of the people, sounds bad to say, but they just don't have it. Now, I think you can convince them or manipulate them to have it. The better thing is to convince them, so like incept the idea. Manipulating is like last case scenario. I don't think it happens too much here. But that's another point of what this conversation is this is something you have to have. This being like that idea of self-reflection and you're on your own. Sure, you're a part of a team and that part has effect to the outcome. Like just like in any ranked team, when you're playing with teammates, is like, sure, you can say you lost because you had someone that left the game. But out of 100 games, it is just you, right? That's something you learned somewhat recently, right? Or was it other people on Overwatch?
Nah, that was me.
Yeah. Because you can always blame the stain on the team. You know, like you can do that, and you can be right. You can be like, these 5 people, if 3 of them played poorly, that's it. But no, you have to be able to judge your own lesson, build up your consistency, and you're just going to gain the rank by default. And that we already said it, but the regressive state and all that, it's going to work itself out if you're just working on the skill and staying disciplined. So now let's talk about different plateaus that you hit. Like we somewhat talked about it with everything we were talking about before with like our changing routines and like the regression state and whatnot. But plateau being like you're learning something, or maybe you're not learning a specific thing and you're searching for what you need to learn. It's just taking a while. Like plateau, the way I think of it is just taking time, and you're stuck. You're stuck at that skill set because it's taking time to find out what you need to do. You're gaining perspectives from other people on what they think you should do. But ultimately with the self-reflection is like, you don't know what the hell it is. You're like, I'm only finding slight things. Those slight things are something, but I'm still searching for more. Or you know what that thing is, your aim, your control of the car, certain mechanics on a certain champ or certain timestamps of the game or something, using your role at a certain time. Like you guys could have all these things, right? So yeah, just start spitting off. Like, I guess if anyone has anything with mechanics towards your game.
I play tank. I don't have to use mechanics.
There's no way that's true. I mean, sure, if you compare yourself to like DPS, you compare yourself to like something else. There's definitely mechanics with that, right? There's a peak, like the best tank has this that you don't have.
To be honest, I focus more on the game senses, and the more as I play the game, honestly, the mechanics just come to me. Like with actually being able to hit more shots and whatever, because then I'm like not focusing on it, but obviously you always have to be like shooting on some characters and stuff. So my mechanics, I can't really talk about too much because, like I said, it's just actually hitting shots came over time when focusing on other things.
Yeah, and I think what I'm hearing, and I want to assume that what you guys are hearing as well, is like that just hasn't become a bottleneck for you yet. Bottleneck being like it hasn't become a problem yet. I think as you're learning, like you said, you're focusing on your game sense and awareness and whatnot, that's going to catch up and it'll probably be at a good enough state. And it's like, okay, my mechanics are bad. So, I mean, I'm assuming, isn't anyone thinking that's correct with him?
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, like for Rocket League, for like around Diamond and Champ level, like air dribbles are like a huge thing. Like everyone, like not everyone can do them, but you can score a lot with them. And then getting into like GC, they become very, very predictable. And it's just like, it's very rare that you see someone score with just an air dribble. So then it becomes of like adding a flip reset to it, or like being able to control your car better. Like there's times where you don't boost to try and bait him in, and then you boost to just tap it over him. So it's like adjusting to the level and like playing not necessarily like unpredictably, but like just not overly predictable, because it's just like it's very easy to tell when someone's just going right for an air dribble. But if you can like switch it up and do something different, it becomes like a whole new level.
And is that like, would you say that's a definite time, like with your progression, where you're like, I needed to change this in order to gain rank?
Yeah, like, so part of the reasons I did change bind, which is what I talked about earlier, is because when air dribbling, if you're playing with arrow right, it's a lot easier to control the ball and you can do a lot more with it versus free arrow, because like free arrow is just like basically like one directional, and then with right arrow you can also turn right and go like up and down, so you can kind of do two like directions at once, so you're able to have better control. And I saw that like with free arrow, I wasn't like, oh, my touches weren't as controlled, and it was a lot easier to defend. And then once I switched, I was able to like control the ball better and beat defenders that I previously would not have been able to beat.
I want to say mechanics, I think a lot of people think you have them or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's true to a point, because I think you can just be good at games, or like good at a certain game. Like that's because,
yeah, what you're basically saying is like, true to a point, that's talent. Like you'll have talent. Like
I think inevitably you will find someone. I think like eventually you will have to think about mechanics no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Like eventually there will be somebody, whether it's because of game sense or just they've played it long enough that they just have a feeling for it, they'll be able to read you.
Mm-hmm.
And just because you have good mechanics, they'll be able to read those mechanics, because everyone at a certain rank has good mechanics, otherwise it wouldn't be there. Like, at least personally for me, like when I'm playing in challenger games, just because you have good mechanics does not mean you're winning the game. Like so does everybody else, and at that point it's just unpredictability. Like half the time I think for league players it's really weird, because when it comes to like dodging per se, what you think, so like you see like a thresh hook animation, players in low elo will throw it right at you. Like they're aiming for where you are, not where you're going to be. And as soon as you get into higher elo, you're like, oh shoot, thresh is hooking, you see you dodge, but then they're like, I'm aiming where you're gonna dodge to. So it's just like you have to overcome these things, and that's where it's like it's less so mechanics, I think, more so game sense in a way.
Well, it becomes 2 in 1.
Yeah.
Like you're using your game sense and controlling what your mechanics are going to do, because you could easily throw it to where they're going to dodge, or you can throw it to where they are, and it becomes kind of like a fighting game. Like if we had someone sitting here, that was,
games.
if we had someone that was sitting here like that played Smash, they would probably talk about like edge guarding in the same way. It becomes like
it's just mind games. Do you jump off? Do you wait? Are they gonna double jump? You know, stuff like that. I think. Sorry, I don't know if you're gonna say.
I was just gonna say it's funny because I go on talking about how I don't use mechanics, and you describe like an exact situation that basically applies to Roadhog in my game.
Yeah, exactly.
Say that again?
Like,
well, because it's basically an exact situation that applies to Roadhog. You can like most players when you get higher up, they throw to where you're gonna dodge, or like they mind game and throw it where you act. You don't. You think that they think that you're gonna, and then. But, well, I mean, in my game, mechanics more just describes, or at least in my eyes, it describes more of like actual ability to hit shots, and game sense and awareness itself is sort of like actually knowing what they're going to do and predicting like that dodging. So that's why I was like talking about how like I don't really need to focus on mechanics, at least where I am right now, as much as I need to focus on game sense, especially with the characters. But I will eventually go up higher. That will need to focus on my aim at some point. But
Yeah, I think we did a decent job of explaining like the different plateaus you could have, but not a direct plateau. Like maybe you guys have a plateau right now. Like you guys are all still grinding right now. Like the plateau right now is probably the one that's hitting the hardest.
Yeah.
Right. So talk about those.
Wait, can I add one from the past?
Yeah, I'll remember.
Well, I mean, my first big plateau that I had to move on from was only playing Reinhardt, because I love my boy, but he's not always the most viable. So I had to move on from that, and then I had the second biggest one that I had to learn to do was calm, because especially on tank and main tank in Overwatch 1, you're expected to calm and you're expected to be the IGL in like ranked games or whatever. So that learning how to do that was, well, those two things were probably the biggest leap so far I've had to overcome.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to say is like with your example, and this is another reason like to be transparent of why you're here. You're like new into getting better.
Yeah.
Like the two Kyles are definitely past those lessons you're learning, because you're saying stuff like, I learned I needed to calm, I learned I needed to get a better pool of champions or heroes that I play. But that is like, those are the easy plateaus. Now, it's going to take some perspective and gaining experience to know what I'm talking about and what these guys eventually are going to talk about. There's going to be some plateaus that do not feel good at all, because
I'm gonna have to learn
when you
all at
started,
some point.
yeah, because when you started talking about like, I started playing more champs, I started calming what I needed to do for my team. Those are pretty easy things to just start doing, and you see a huge benefit. Like you start doing it, boom, you see a +5 in my skill, +5, +10, whatever. And we should eventually get into some plateaus you guys maybe been through, where it's like you knew it was a plateau, you knew it was something you needed to learn, and you saw a +0.02. But that's a difference you have to gain to get better. And those get very detailed. They get very detailed. They're small, like you're going to see a small benefit. You're going to see a small thing that you're doing wrong. It's going to take a long time to find it. It's going to take a long time to overcome it. Who has one? I know someone has one.
I mean, like personally right now, I can say that I'm like somewhat in a plateau. Like I've peaked GC3 and I've been there before, and I've been able to play at the level. Like right now, I just like can't get out of GC2 and I'm kind of like stuck. And I'm like able to identify some of the things that I need to do better. But like even when I do fix them, like I don't see immediate like results like you would like some of the other ones. Like right now, like boost management is like something I've been working on for a while, and I'm still working on it. I've gotten a lot better, but it's just like it makes a difference, but it's not game winning or anything like that. And then
what's like the most recent thing that you were, because you're looking for something that makes a
Mm-hmm.
difference, right? What's the most recent thing that you saw besides the boost management? And now it's in hindsight and you know it affected? Because it sounded like the boost management one, you're still kind of seeing like how much of an effect could it have?
Like, well,
And that's what a plateau looks
Mhm.
like. You're searching for the correct thing that's going to
Yeah.
have a competitive advantage.
Mhm.
What was the last thing you remember?
that like gave me a competitive advantage.
Yeah, that you know for sure. Like even if it's minor or whatever, if it was major, like the major ones are easy. And the thing is, a lot of good players, and that's why I'm trying to catch you guys at a timestamp now. A lot of the players on the grind, this timestamp you're at now, and you're going to overcome a lesson right now, you will not remember in a year.
Mhm.
A lot of people. So I coached a guy that was #1 mid laner for league, ranked #1. He went on to 100 Thieves Academy. And I would ask him some of these questions, like in prep for what I'm going to do here. He just didn't know anything.
Mhm.
Didn't know any answer to any of the questions, because he probably knew when it was happening and it was important then, but there's no reason for it to stay important to him. And it's
Yeah.
always searching for the next thing.
Mhm.
And what you hear from a lot of pros, like really, really high up, is they'll just say like, I'm better. Like, you know, it's
Yeah.
like, why, how did you get better? I don't know. You know, you just got to play a lot.
Mhm.
But the thing is, they had to get to that point, they had to be very cognitive of it. So you guys are in a cognitive timestamp now.
Yeah.
You can talk about it now.
I like one thing is it was kind of recent, somewhat, but like recoveries, like I said, like I implemented that into my warm up, like practicing recoveries, which seems so like insignificant. But, like after you're flipping or after you challenge the ball, like being able to like land on the wall perfectly and like keeping momentum is huge. Because like previously, like let's say like I landed poorly and I can't get back and I can't save a goal, but like if I landed smoothly and kept my momentum, I'm able to get back and save a goal. And it like I saw like a pretty big competitive advantage of like being able to like maintain my speed and like being able to play at, I guess, higher speed consistently, because I'm not constantly like looking. It also helps with like my boost management as well, because I'm not looking for boost because I'm able to like keep momentum. I'm like staying fast.
And so like right now you can say what rank you learned that lesson at. Do you know?
It was like GC1, but like I'd always kind of known that like I needed to land better, but like it was like fine tuning it to the point where I'm not just landing on all four wheels, but I'm maintaining my speed. I'm not losing speed.
Yeah. And unless you're like a coach that's doing this all the time, when you ask for a player's point of view of like those lessons that happen, because if we would talk to like a high end SSL and they start to talk about the things like what they learned at like that specific rank, they're not really going to know. Yeah. So again, big points of like why I'm doing all this is you're only cognitive for a little bit and then it gets put into habit. It only feels bad for a little bit to a long time, but then when it gets put into habit, it's on to the next thing that's going to make you feel bad. Yeah. What do you got?
I mean, for me, I think my biggest plateau was like my mechanical skill. I think it was during COVID time, a year and a half ago, when we had the conversation. I was so fixated on game sense.
We had a
games.
Conversation?
Yeah, it was.
Is this when I said you have to have like the God hands?
Well, you said God hands, kid power. That's when you mentioned everything mechanical to me.
Yeah.
I didn't focus anything about mechanics. I was like, I'm top like 1,000 aim labs players. Like my mechanics are fine. And you're like, no. Like I'm telling you, your game sense is good. Mechanics, you're lacking in your mechanics. And like I didn't really believe it until I hit a really bad low. Like I ended up dropping out of Immortal. Like that's how bad it was. So I was like, all right, I need to just listen to anything.
I mean, this is new to me now. So like when you were focusing on like your aim, positioning, your swing and stuff like that, it becomes more relevant in solo queue, right? Because like strategy can take you further in scrim and team play. But in solo queue, like that's probably the advice I gave with solo queue, because mostly like with wanting to go pro, hitting top 50 solo queue is like a constant. Like he knows that too. But you're mostly gonna only be able to do that with skill. Like like the macro, the game sense won't get you there, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
What are some of the things like specific? Like I don't know Valorant. Someone watching does know Valorant.
Yeah.
What are some of the things where it's like this was it?
I mean, I think for me it was a lot of understanding what the enemy, like think of like what the enemy sees. Like, okay, like if I'm standing here holding this angle, like how would I expect you to swing this angle? Or like what am I expecting you to do? Like, okay, if I'm a flash player, I'm expecting you to flash it. So I'm gonna wait till I hear a flash or something like that before I peek. And so like it's kind of understanding like the situation, being able to have practiced the situation or have had experience in that situation and being able to like manipulate it and like practice it a lot.
That still sounds more game sense awareness. Like, yeah, there's a mechanic going through of like, they're going to use this, I'm going to react this way. But like,
well, tapping into that like kid power and stuff like that too. So like you're not going to be right 100% of the time. So being able to like react, like I think for me, it was just, I started playing the game more, more subconscious hours, like just practicing on an alt account, just running in, doing stupid stuff, but like making it work. Like it just
stupid stuff would be like trying to run in and
1v5
get in that
everything.
bad situation. Yeah. I'm going to kill everybody.
Yeah. And like I just over time, it's tilting, it's frustrating. I was stuck. I was hard stuck in Immortal 3 for a year and a half, but like after a year and a half of practice, like all of a sudden it clicked one day, and I mean I shot up. I hit like top 60 radiant or something like that.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the act. So.
And see, you're one of the examples, and there's a few other examples where I say the same thing of like, do you guys know what kid power is?
No.
Yeah, you talked about it.
So every once in a while I bring it up, but then there's some years where it's like I don't talk about it. kid power is like when you're an adult. So I'll say the adult part first. You guys are entering adult mindset. Adult mindset wants to analyze everything. They want to do things correctly. They want to do things safely and correctly. So like when you start playing a sport or something like that, let's say you start playing a sport right now, you're not going to start it up and go so hard to where you maybe break a leg. But when you're a kid and you start playing a sport, you will break a leg. Like you won't care. You're trying to just go hard. You don't care about the consequences and whatnot. You're just, you want to get really, really good. So you just go for the really, really good. Now in esports in our games, it's like kid power. You start off wanting to make the montage. Like you start off wanting to do the heavy mechanical things, the really high skill cap stuff. And then they backpedal from there as they get more cognitive. Usually it's subconscious cognitive of like, I'm trying to go in and kill 3 people. I'm trying to do whatever high skill Rocket League thing. Like we all have our examples of the high skill thing they're trying to do. They go for that and then they backpedal from there. What the adult does is they're risk averse. They're playing to not lose. They care more about the result of that game, winning or losing. The kid, they don't care. They're just trying to be the best. And literally all they're focused on is the best. They could lose a game and not care. If they did their montage thing a little bit and they're like, oh man, I got that clip. That's the kid power. Mm-hmm. And like, I know it from, we came up with the word when I was playing Halo. There was always like some high schooler that like didn't know anything about the strategy of the game, didn't know anything about the macro sense, how to position, how to handle like timers and cooldowns and the equivalent of like when a team fight should happen and stuff like that, right? But they're just good. They had hands, and hands carried them to almost pro. Mm. Now, here we're not even near pro, so hands could carry you to the best in the state, right? So that's what I'm always like saying to all of you guys. This would be an example where like it goes through. You hear me arguing it with Rocket League all the time. Jarno thinks the same way, so it's happening with Overwatch. In League, we for sure know that like we can't compete unless we win lane. So I kind of tangented a little bit back onto like more Plateaus. If anyone knows like a specific, especially for a game, like we talked a little bit with, you said your Overwatch 1, and like I don't know if it's, are you seeing any kind of sense of like what they're talking about is strange, or are you following?
I'm following a bit.
Yeah, because I'm curious if there's ever like a lesson where like someone's talking about like such a small thing.
Oh, I have a lot.
I'm sure you might. I mean, you took a break from school, and I know more about your story than I do with your guys's. So like, I know when you were struggling, and you talked to me a little bit, but for the most part, you're on your own for sure. Mm-hmm. But when you were talking about like in our game, there's points you want to try really hard that you think will win, that you think will be the correct timing, the right read on the game, the right timestamp to be going for the pop-off. And I think that's the thing you still struggle with, like even in ranked games, right?
Yeah. I mean,
any movement with that? Because that's the really minute thing. And the thing is, in a broad sense, to like a gold player, they're going to think the same thing. Like, they might think, I need to smash lane, and I smash lane, I win the game. Yeah. But then at a certain rank, no.
I'm still working on that right now.
Yeah.
And it's definitely been the most frustrating because you see the least amount of returns in this area. And it's kind of similar to like the going for gold and bringing it down from there, like kid power thing. Yeah. It's like when I started playing League, I only wanted to play if I'm smashing the absolute like crap out of these kids. Like that's my joy from playing League. And that's not always the way you win these games.
Yeah.
Is like you can't always just go pedal to the metal, just win. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, it definitely feels bad because I have to try to scale it back in these situations a lot. And it's going to feel bad in that sense where it's like, I think I can play more aggressive here, but in like that game state, or you're thinking, okay, maybe I shouldn't for the benefit of this team, like the game state that you're in, maybe I can win off of that. And I think, I don't know, like let's say I'm going to go for a 1v1 in my game. Let's say I win it. Does that kind of help the game state at all? Does that make you win the game? It's kind of at the point where I'm at. And it's hard because it's kind of battling what I built up to this point where I mechanically outplay people and that's about it. And now I have to kind of sit there and think, okay, is it worth to even go for this mechanical player 1v1 or just like, I guess, stomp on the other person? It just feels bad because you have to take into account, okay, these 4 random people I'm playing with.
I think I could sum up the analogy with it. So, because you're in an area where it's like when people see him play, because we're in a conference where like people that are as good or better than him see him play, and they're like, "Damn, he's got hands. He's doing it." But it's at the point where like you need the game sense and the actual strat. It's a rare spot where it's like you need to have a better read on the actual game, not the mechanical sense of the game, and not the performing sense of the game. It's when do you do that? When do you be patient for that? And that's really hard because the competitive level is like everyone's matching you. Nobody gets to like just smash somebody. Maybe if there's a Smurf that's like top rank 1 playing and they're smashing people. But when you're on the rise to that point, you're learning those opportunities. So, I mean, to sum it up, to make sense to everybody, it's like, I think what you're struggling with is finding that right spot. And the thing is, I've never grinded to his spot. I've had players who have and have done more, and like I can tap in and ask them, but at the same time, they won't know what they learned because you didn't catch them at the right spot where they learned that, so they don't know how to go into specifics of teaching that. But I think if anyone that did get to that higher rank, like came back to like coaching and teaching people, they'll start to learn it again. It'll take them time. It'll probably take them like the same amount of time it took them to get that good at the game, because it's just a different mindset of like you're learning for yourself, or I'm remembering this to teach it in a subjective way to somebody else. That's why it's so hard to get perspective as well, because it's just, so often you don't know what you learned. So like when you were first getting into Immortal, there's probably like 4 things you did, maybe like 10 things you did. Maybe you remember 3. Like actually remember 3 to where you can teach it and know like this is what I did and this is what can work for you. So if this is the one thing we didn't touch on. We did somewhat mechanical, somewhat game sense, but with a habit that got you to a certain rank, some kind of gimmick, some kind of something that you knew, I'm going to start doing this. It's going to work. This is going to be my competitive advantage. But then you use it for a while and then you have to relearn. You have to erase that lesson and be like, this only worked for Diamond. This only worked for this subset of rank because the players there don't know how to handle it. But then the players at this subset, that's child's play now. It needs to just be gone. It's not even something you're doing anymore. Anything with that? Any examples?
I think it's hard to find something that you throw away completely.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where I'm at right now in a way. It's like up until, even if I get lucky with teammates, on a good day, I can definitely get to high GM, low challenger by just like curb stomping kids and not caring about how to actually respect my opponents. But now I'm trying to dial that back and trying to learn, okay, let's say my teammates aren't on the same like wavelength, or they're not.
You have to analyze them quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you analyze them too late, you lost.
Yeah.
If you analyze them too late, you lost the game.
And I think when I took my break from school, I wish I found that out sooner, because I think I went through that entire time period just knocking my head into a wall with that mentality of
looking at yourself, but really the problem was you needed to judge.
I needed to
the things
figure
you're
out,
working with.
I needed to pay more attention to my surroundings in a sense. It's like I'm trying to play the exact same way every game. And I think that's what really made me burn out in the end, was the fact that I was just getting frustrated, thinking like I'm better than these people, and I know it for sure, because like I was sitting in like a lower rank than I usually am as well, and I was just
trying to figure out what I'm doing wrong in my bubble vacuum.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, I know I can play this way in like perfect vacuum scenario. Like I should be able to play this way, but that's not how games are gonna go. That's not how it's gonna be every time. Like just because you have a certain like team comp or like a certain like scenario, there's gonna be like another variable that you probably are missing. That's gonna be like, you can't do that. So that's I was always overlooking that. I was thinking too, I guess, shallow when it came to those things. It's like for league examples, like I'm thinking about generally 2v2 for the champions that they are at face value, not how my teammates playing, not
Yeah.
what they're doing.
And I think you guys can analogy that as well as like tank healer, duelist, and the util you're using as a duelist. What do you play?
I play Sentinel.
Yeah, well, you're more alone sometimes. Yeah, but there probably is that between the people that coordinate more, especially in like a ranked game. It's so dynamic, and that's why I think you have to be very, very good at ranked because it is that dynamic. You have to be able to read it. Yeah.
I mean, I think even Sentinel, like you still have your moments when you have to be able to like play as a team and stuff like that. So like being able to like change the mindset is like a big thing. Like it's a habit that I had to break, like not being the solo player that I
Yeah,
wanted
just
to
the
be.
lone wolf.
Yeah. So that was a big like learning curve for me as well.
I can comment on like one of the habits that like works and then doesn't work. It's actually in Valorant, so you probably will comment more on this. I'm not great at Valorant, but I play it like like decently. Crouch spraying at like low elos like works. Like you can get like a lot of kills, but then like as you try and climb, you realize it just sucks. Like you just get murdered because people just come in and one tap you, and if you're trying to crouch spray, you're just gonna get outplayed.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to unlearn that and then like learn to just like tap fire and shoot for the head. I don't know. You might be able to comment more on that than I can, but
I mean, yeah, it's just talking about like movement and like trying to keep like momentum and like how fast like fights happen. Like I'm sure in League, like there's team fights that you expect will be done in like 10 seconds and they last 30 seconds. So like it's kind of the same thing, just mechanics. I guess that's what that relates to. It's just mechanical breaking habits.
Next thing is in your progression tree, it could be any timestamp of it, or it could just be overall and all. I'd rather you guys talk like overall and all. What would be the most important thing to look at and get better at to get the most reward and become a better player with, between like your game sense, which could also be like your awareness, your comms of that, pure just mechanics, aim? What would you guys choose? In my opinion, I'll always tell someone that mechanics is going to take you a lot further. You're going to get the most bang for your buck. I would agree with someone's argument saying like game sense can do almost the same, but I think what a lot of people do, if they do focus on game sense, they'll ignore mechanics and think game sense can overcome mechanics, and then they get a hard lesson later, and it's going to be an actual hard lesson that might make them like legit quit the game, because mechanics is way harder to learn than anything else, in my opinion. You guys can talk about it if you agree or don't agree, because mechanics are going to be the things that's so hard to get. It's going to feel bad when you're not getting it as well. So it's going to be doubled down bad, because if you're sitting there, you have all the game sense in the world. Let's think like Shuba, all the game sense in the world. He's able to like think the way a coach would think or whatnot. But you sit him down on the sticks and they don't move correctly. Their aim's bad. You can just tell right away, like this guy doesn't have it. And like when I'm doing tryouts for League, I can see someone just moving and I know what they're capable of.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, I can have them talk to me and I'll have a different sense. Like they could talk to me and I'm like, man, this guy has to be like diamond masters. Like maybe they just watch a lot of pro and they're like, they know what's going on in the game. But all you have to do is see them move a little bit and you know right from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you guys think? You just agree with me? Or?
I totally agree. Like Rocket League's a really mechanical game, so it's like quite obvious. And I like you can tell the players that like have it, or like you said, they have it versus they don't. And then when you get to like higher ranks, like someone that is like really game sense has really good positioning, like you said, it's a lot harder to teach them the mechanics versus like in my case, like I was pretty mechanical, like getting up to the point where I'm at, and then I'm trying to learn like game sense, and it's a lot easier than like having to learn an entire new mechanic and like kind of relearning everything. So I'd say like mechanics and like for Rocket League in specific, like car control is just like huge. Like
and when you say it's easier, what are the specific things that make it easier? Like learning the game sense, learning the stratting or whatnot? Because in my opinion, like you can just watch a lot on that. You can watch the pros and you'd be like, that movement makes sense. That stuff makes sense. But the gaining the mechanics, it's not able to just make sense and you have it, right? There's an extra step of training a long time.
Like for game sense, like for me, it's just like I'll watch pro play and I try and like mimic it. But like if you were trying to do that in mechanics, it'd just be like you can't keep up.
Yeah.
Like you'd have to break it down into like learning this, learning that. Versus like you have the skills where you can somewhat follow them and like closely mimic their movements if you have good enough mechanics. And like I was gonna say, it was with like car control in Rocket League, is like even from like bronze all the way up to SSL, like it is ever improving. And like Rocket League has like a super high skill curve. So even at the higher ranks, like I think I'm fairly mechanical, but I know even like compared to like the top players, my car control is not good enough. And it's something that I'm continuously like working on. And it's just like a huge thing that you can tell of like when I get, and I'm in a rank 2 and my teammates I can tell just don't have as good car control. I'm like, they're like going to be slower. They're not going to be as good, even if they are positioning correctly.
Yeah, and with like the difference of skill and rank and whatnot, it's also an ever-changing thing. Just like everyone's always evolving, the competition's always getting better. Like to put that in a direct sense, the SSLs, the challengers, the top 500, the Radiants of 3 years ago, the game was now 3 years ago, but of 3 years ago, do you think they'd still be it now? No changes?
No,
To the skill?
because I mean, I've been playing the game long enough in Rocket League where like there was players that were top of the game, like RLCS pros that play now still and just aren't even like SSL anymore. Like they're not even at the top 1% just because they weren't able to keep up with the constant skill curve that was continuously going up.
Yeah. I'm sure everyone would. I mean, the older the game is, the more examples of it in leagues, like one of the older games. So like you'll be in games where you see like, this guy was awesome. Ooh,
Yeah.
it's not awesome anymore.
A lot of times.
Yeah. So anyone a different opinion of like mechanics isn't?
I think in Overwatch specifically and on tank specifically, I think game sense is a bit more important than mechanics because you constantly have to be in sync with 4 other people, like basically at all times in Overwatch, sort of. So it's like, especially on tank, when you're like leading the charge, sort of, it's like you have to know when to do everything and when everyone else is also supposed to do everything, so you can go in on that. And you can also have someone else on your team like pop off and just be sort of like assisting them, and that can work. But I think
let me give you an example that interrupts that a little bit, because everything you're saying is true. But the thing is, it's going to be true across the board. Even the people that are saying like mechanics is prime, they will still agree with you that the things that is important with what you're saying is happening in their game too. Now, let me put an example that's maybe going to make it make sense. In favor of, like, you can always just keep thinking game sense is going to take you.
I can like see each way. It's just I personally think.
Yeah, but let's say like Diva or someone else that's like the highest mechanic tank. I would say maybe it's Diva, highest mechanic tank.
Probably Ball.
Yes. Probably
Okay,
Ball.
so yeah, I can see that as well. Now, let's say for like a whole year, that's going to be meta. It's not going to change. Like you have to play that. It takes a lot of mechanics to do well with that. But the thing is, let's say you keep doing game sense. You do game sense for 2 more years. Ryan's number 1. Ryan's pretty easy. You can still do everything game sense. But then it's time for Ball. Are you going to go to JV now because you never practiced mechanics? Right?
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I can see that, and it's like, yeah, I definitely see it from that perspective too. But
And I think with some of the other games, League definitely changes often. Overwatch, it's starting to change more often. Like you're starting to get more champs in.
I think,
More
especially with
frequent patches.
Overwatch 2, you have to. There's a lot less ability to rely on one like hero on tank, because before you'd have like half of the tanks that you play, because you'd either be main or off tank, and then usually there'd be like metas for like a while where you'd only play like 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And now, since you have like double the tanks you pretty much have to play, and the fact that like now, at least in this season, there's actually like different like map-based metas and like different things that you can play instead of just being one hard meta.
And you're still within like 1 year of the grind. So you have the smallest amount of history of maybe close to small. You have like 2 years, 3 years.
I mean, I've been playing the game for a long time, so like I've been.
But like the competitive mindset where you're paying attention to like.
Yeah, like the
that
smaller
grind.
details. Yeah, that's not quite as long.
And like what you said earlier, like, what did you say? Your mechanics are fine. You're seeing all the competitive advantages from the other things, right? I do think in time you're going to get hit with a brick. It's going to be like, my mechanics are not up to par. But it would be a good hit. So, no, it is interesting to hear that you are within the realm of the novice within the group. I'm not trying to be like disparaging. Yeah, I'm not trying to do any of that, but like to where you will say opposite of these guys. I'm just saying maybe you'll be humbled. I'm predicting it might happen.
It always
You're
will.
probably
It happens.
Yeah.
You need mechanics in any game you're playing, especially adapting games. Like if you're not mechanical, you're never gonna adapt. Like let's say you're good at game state, you can read the game state, all that stuff. Okay, what if the optimal play requires you to have mechanics? All right, you lose. It's over. Like it's just doomed. So
If you
it's
can
like,
envision it, but you can't actually do it, then what's the point of being knowing what's right if you aren't able to actually perform it?
Yeah.
And it's so hard for me to try to be open-minded to where some other argument could win, game sense or comms or something like that, like to allow that to win. But the thing is, mechanics is always the floor. Like if you don't have it, you can't do the other things. And the floor is always going up with the different levels of play.
I think it helps if you think of it like this. It's like, let's say you have somebody who's mechanical god and they're like maybe like a 5 out of 10 on game sense. They're gonna beat the 10 out of 10 game sense 5 on mechanics every time. Because let's say the 10 out of 10 game sense finds that he knows the best play. Like he knows what should be happening. But I feel like 9 out of 10 times he's gonna spill his spaghetti all over the place, and the other guy's just gonna
and the other guy's ability to just react and play is just gonna be so much better.
Like it's just
it doesn't
gonna
really matter.
He's not gonna know what the best play is, and then that guy might like the 10 out of 10 game sense might initiate the play, but the mechanical god's just gonna be like, oh, all right, that's what's happening, and then it's just done. Like, and after that point, they're never gonna come back. Like, especially games with momentum, it's like once that player has kind of that advantage over them, especially I think it's weird because the most mechanical players won't really feel that. They'll just keep trying and like they don't really care. But the person who has game sense, they're just gonna be like, it's doomed.
They overanalyze.
Because you can't pause the game and be like, okay, let me upgrade my mechanics.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
No.
Like, but if you have a bunch of mechanical people and then you pause the game and a coach or somebody else is like, all right, change this up, they're doing this. Game sense, strat, macro, blah, blah, blah. You can just change it slightly.
Man, I think the longer this goes on, the more you're convincing me.
I don't want that to be the point, but I also do. Like I said, I want to be open-minded to where like a lot of these things are important and you can't ignore any of them.
Yeah, I think they're all important, obviously, but if you have no mechanics, you're not going to get anywhere. Like, I know a lot of good league players that have really good like game sense, but their mechanics are subpar. And like, let's say they hit Challenger anyway, like they're top 300 on NA. They're not going to really get offers for teams just because of the fact, okay, this other support rolls up, let's say, and he has more abilities. He's in, like, even if his game sense is bad, mechanics usually ends up putting you in better spots for these fights. And it's like, they're going to take that guy 10 out of 10 times and they're going to just teach him what he doesn't know when it comes to macro play. So it's like, when it comes to like teaching these mechanics, the coaches almost never have what it takes to teach these things.
Yeah.
Because like when they were
Otherwise
playing,
they'd be playing.
yeah, and when they were playing, let's say they were like retired pro, the game has changed since then. Like what was challenger or top rank for them, that might be like third rank from the top at this point. Like that's just common knowledge from everyone who's like top 2,000 ladder. So it's just like you're gonna fall off the face of the earth if you don't have the mechanics to back anything up. I don't think I could ever be swayed. Like I don't like someone could be like, oh, this is why I think like macro and stratting is more important. But like I'm never gonna be like, oh yeah, for sure, dog. I'm just gonna be like, you're wrong.
Yeah, and that's another reason why I'm so lean towards mechanics. Because like, let's say I was always coaching gold level players, like just that's the only experience I have. I might be saying like, yeah, game sense, comms, blah, blah. Like I talk to a lot of the high school coaches and that is their world. The highest they'll coach is gold. And they'll always say like, oh, your comms need to be better, your game sense needs to be better, strat, whatever. But they don't get to see the actual outcome of someone that's just a mechanics god. But I didn't have, when I came into coaching, I went straight into like top level players. And when I would teach them strat, like their stratting was nothing. They had no stratting, but they would just keep winning against teams they're not supposed to be winning against because they're just like ladder players. They're like at the top of the top. It was so much easier to teach stratting to that. And then when I came here, in my team at the time when I came here was all gold league players. And a lot of them were like, no, I don't need the mechanics. I got it. Just teach us how to like do things together. Comms are very important. Because it's very easy to put the excuse on that. Like my comms need to be better. My game sense needs to be better. The stratting needs to be better. And that's the things that I want to change because they can see that in their like horizon. But when they start to look at mechanics on their horizon and they never focused on that, it's daunting. It's like, can I even do that? And then they convince themselves it's not important. And then they get stuck forever. When it comes to like now you're in the serious mindset, you're grinding, you have things to compete with, competitions are starting to happen now. You have a confidence, maybe the confidence turned into an ego because you do nothing but win. How do you handle the humble, you just know these things and you compete with these things? What's the pro and con of like needing the ego to actually clutch out and be better than just the base knowledge that you have? Because when it comes to competition, there's more involved, especially lands. Like everyone's been to a land. You haven't been to a land yet.
No, I was in JP and we got stuck.
Okay. But still land pushes you in a way where you're either going to perform worse or better. But there's a state you need to hit to be able to do that. So this is pretty like open-ended. You can answer however you want to. There's a lot involved with it. But just like handling the confidence you've gained, times where like the ego's gotten in the way of actually being a good player with that. And then you can tap into a little bit of like when you're getting pressured. With pressure comes nerves and anxiety of that. Do you do anything to combat that? So my example, I don't have the same stories you guys do because I never competed in esports. But when I would break dance and whatnot, I had a certain level of skill I'm able to do. Let's say I was like a 5 out of 10. And I could win my match if I performed at a 5 out of 10. But I am shaking and I'm nervous because I'm going to be on a stage. I'm thinking of a real memory. I'm about to be on a stage. There's a crowd. Never done that before. And for me, like if I mess up like my 5 out of 10 skill level thing, I get hurt as well. So like I'm already doubting what I'm able to do. But in the moment, like the kind of person I am when I'm competing is I'm completely egoed out of my mind. There's no way I ever lose to whoever it is that's like in front of me. I don't know, it gets really hard to talk about what exactly you do because it's always changing. But for me, like entering that flow state and getting into the zone, it's weird for me. I just do a really weird pukey cough. And then it's like, I'm okay with the nerves that I have because I think nerves and anxiety is going to push you to actually perform. It's not a bad thing when it happens. I think it's a bad thing when it's not there. So I don't know, I probably triggered a lot of things that you guys are thinking, but just have at it.
I mean, I've experienced anxiety like when I went to like the first major LAN, like I could tell like I wasn't playing my best. I haven't really like found a way, I guess, to like tap into that flow state, but I was just like, the way I was kind of doing it was like, I was just trying to like self-analyze and like, I know like part of the ego is like, there's like bad and good to an ego, like understanding where your skill is and then versus like being delusional and like thinking you're better than you are. So like I was just trying to like know what I'm capable of and like consistently do that and play with confidence in the like sections I could, and I like not being like egotistical. But that was kind of just my breakdown of like combating anxiety. But I feel like it's different for everyone. But that's kind of just my take. But I haven't been like a competitive scene long enough to like have a definitive way.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. Like I was trying to think for you guys because it's going to be ever changing. You're always going to be progressing, and then you're going to start learning what it's like to compete at a level where your competitor is at the same level as you. So then you're pressured to do the extra because that's going to get the win. And sometimes the extra is to just turn your confidence into an ego of like, I'm just going to win. And then self-fulfilling prophecy or whatever. You're just more confident than them, right? And if it can showcase in game, like Call of Duty people, sometimes Valorant people, you'll like yell and whatnot. But I think when it's just like the majority of esports where it's all you can show is in the game, if you just like dominate someone at the beginning of a round or something like that, or at the beginning of the match or something, that could be enough to put you over the edge if it's an even level. Because then you baited them out. They can't.
It sets the tone.
Yeah. Any mistakes with it? Any triumphs with it?
I mean, I've definitely had mistakes with it. Kind of saw that all of this semester in our games. I mean, everything. I think when you have an ego, like Jake said, there's good and bad to it.
Mm-hmm.
If it's affecting how your relationship is with your teammates and how the game kind of, I guess, flows in that like little ecosystem, it's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to using your ego to be confident in your abilities and not second guessing yourself and just being able to just think in your head, like, I can win this fight. Like, if you have doubts that you're going to be able to win either like a small fight or like a small exchange, you've already kind of lost at that point. And I think a lot of people just kind of have that doubt internally with anything they do, let alone gaming, where it's just they kind of just have this just self-doubt. I'm not really sure why.
Yeah, it becomes like subconscious, and like sometimes you don't even realize you're doing it, but you're playing scared and you end up losing and you take like a bad position because of it.
And maybe it's just because they don't, I don't know. I feel like when I played soccer, I felt this a lot more than I do when I play League. Maybe it's just because I wasn't confident when I played soccer. Like, it's so difficult to gain an ego if you don't love what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the thing. Like, you're never gonna have an ego if you don't want to be the best.
Yeah, and you're actually pushing towards it, because it's also a difference of like when you're in the grind, you are always second guessing on what you're doing right or wrong because you're trying to learn.
Yeah.
And then you're asked to do same game, same stuff in an actual match, but don't second guess it.
Yeah, like performance zone versus like a training zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes for us, like the setting doesn't even change. It's just like go back in the room, play the game online.
Yeah.
So we have to do something, or it's not a have to. Curious if anyone does. I think if I was sitting in your shoes and I was going to the same room for practice and going into the same room for a competition, I'm doing something a little extra to try to enter a zone where I'm more probable to clutch a moment out and not second guess.
I definitely have a change of like mind when it's like game day as compared to like practice day, whether that's like wearing your jersey. Like, I know a lot of people sometimes don't show up to jerseys for games. I don't know why.
Lazy. Just lazy.
I don't know why. But for me, it's like the jersey signifies like it's time to go.
Yeah.
Like if you're not like, I don't want to say like ready to kill somebody, but like this is it.
Yeah.
Like if you mess up, like this is your chance to show what you've been working on.
Yeah.
Especially around now, like a lot of people are in playoffs. I think. Playoffs maybe. Or...
Gleck's next weekend.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I'm totally with you. Like putting on the jersey is like huge. Like that, I think that's like that separates like that's one thing that separates performance zone from like training zone. And like you said though, it's like it's higher stakes, but like if you perform in those high stakes, it is like just so it feels amazing.
Yeah, and I don't think people, I guess, take that as they should. I don't know. They don't put enough significance on it. It's like those game days are kind of where you're. I don't want to say it's where you're built, but it's like that's where you get your recognition. That's where you get your self-assurance. And if you're not showing up ready to make a statement, I don't. In my opinion, it's like, why are you practicing that? Like, if you're not showing up for a purpose, like you know what you have to do, and you're not thinking about like every small detail. I don't know. Like when it's game day, like I'm in overdrive like all the time, and half the time I think some people shut down when it comes to these high pressure situations.
Yeah.
And
it's like the test. It's the time to prove if you've been doing what you need to in practice, and people are scared of the results of that.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, when I played soccer, I was not as motivated as I am for when I played League. So I think that's definitely a reason as to why I wasn't just as confident as I am when it comes to this. And I think it's probably the same for other people. It's like if they aren't like this isn't what they like I guess dream of. It's like they're not gonna.
Yeah.
They're gonna be scared.
Yeah. If you
They're
can't
gonna be
imagine
scared.
yourself the best and winning, then you're never gonna win. And like, I mean, I played soccer as well. I played like my high school was really good, and I wasn't like the best, but I just like I didn't love it like I do like playing Rocket League, and I never saw myself like imagine myself in like a better situation, like doing good. So I was always I played scared. But like in Rocket League, I've seen what I can do, and I know like I'm able to do good, so I can like kind of just tap into like I have to do this, I can do it, I will do it.
Yeah, I mean, like bringing it back to soccer, like those like game nights under the lights, I was terrified. Like I was like, oh God, please don't mess up.
Yeah.
But now it's like when it's game day, I'm never happier. Like that's like I'm ready. Like I want it. I want to show up. I want. It's not even like don't make a mistake. It's like show them like how much better you are. Is how I want like to say a lot. But you don't want to let that get too far.
Yeah.
To the point where you're.
Yeah, that's why
destroying your teammates.
That's why the original conversation was like, how do you handle the ego? Because there's repercussions to ego.
Yeah, it's.
I think it goes back to like self-awareness.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to improving, you have to have self-awareness, and you have to have self-awareness when but I mean, honestly, like the only way to learn that you have an ego is just to get checked. Like you'll play against someone and you just get rolled, and you're like, I'm not as good as I think I am. And then from there, like once you've hit that point, like you never really go back, or at least I like haven't. But like there probably are.
I think there
cases
is a
where
learning curve to it, where
but-
it's like you get checked, and then eventually when you come back to like the evening out phase, because ideally you're at an evening out phase of where you're playing teams that are like, you know, the competitive level. This is where you should be winning at. This is like your peak, and to get past that and to move a little bit past that, it's the whole limit testing going, and you have to push a little bit more. Like you could just be a studious knowledge based person where it's like practice gaining all the knowledge, and then you're just going to show your studies towards them. Like that's a weird way to say it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it makes sense.
But there's going to be other people that do the same thing. Now, then it becomes the human aspect of adding some extra push, some extra clutch, some extra outside of the norm, outside the meta, reacting faster. And that's where the ego can help. Yeah. So we've came full circle of for fun to how to manage. I'm confident I'm going to beat up all these people I'm competing against. So to wrap this up, imagine you are a freshman coming in to the program, and some of you just did that. What's the biggest tip you can give them for like, and give this tip to someone that's like gold? Yeah. Because a lot of the people that are higher than gold, you guys have gold in your games, right?
Yeah.
Gold, plat, whatever. The people that are higher than that, they'll get the lessons that we talked about in between this. The people that are gold, they don't know yet. And if they want to know, give them the best tip. They're about to make that for fun to serious switch. Yeah. My biggest tip, you can agree, you can add on to it. My biggest tip is do not care about your rank, do not care about your progress, but just become very, very showman with what you're playing. And you know you're gonna fill in the blanks to what a showman is. You're gonna get an awesome shot. You're gonna start playing like Widowmaker or Genji. You're gonna be playing Lee Sin and you're gonna be looking to show off. Learn to show off. Because showing off means you're doing mechanically good enough stuff to impress someone else. And just go from there. That's gonna be fun to do. It's gonna be practicing the mechanics that we're all saying is like pretty high up there on like what you need to focus on. Yeah, that's my biggest tip. Just become a showman.
Yeah.
Try to be.
I mean, like, it kind of goes back to the kid power thing. Like, I guess like getting better is like for Rocket League, like you just like air dribbles are cool. I want to do it. And in order to get it, like you learn multiple mechanics that are like huge in other aspects. So it's like, just like shooting for the stars, and then like it becomes slowly more attainable after everything you do. And before you know it, you're a higher rank and you're competing.
I think the best tip I can give is being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So not every atmosphere is going to be like perfect. Not every team's going to be perfect. Like you got to learn to be comfortable with the adjustments and being able to be adaptable in the clutch or in the moment.
Well, first off, I want to say you shouldn't have an ego because you're bad. But,
Yeah.
but play like you're the god, because you can't. There's only one way to gain an ego, and that's just to kind of put in the work and get to the point where you can beat people. Like, at least when it comes to League, in laning phase, if you outplay them once, the damage, like, it's like, I'm not saying like just like kill them or like take a turret. Like, if you outplay them single-handedly 1v1, you've done enough mental damage to the point where you just kind of, you're gonna have a step over them no matter at any point in the rest of the game. Like, the only way you can learn that is just by trial and error. And I think a lot of people have that issue where you said, like, with your team here, like when you first showed up your league team, which was like all goals, and they're like, oh, I need to learn how to calm, I need to figure out like on wave X, Y, and Z. Like,
Yeah, because those are easy trials. Now, in your example, the harder trial, the mechanics trial, the outplaying them trial, you're going to fail a lot.
Yeah, you're not
So, don't be afraid of failure.
Yeah, like, you need to limit test, and limit test might end up with your teammates flaming you.
And what limit test actually means, because it's probably a new word for someone watching, is you need to do what you're not comfortable doing. You need to be able to do what you know is outside of your scope, outside of your skill level. You're trying to do that, and you're going to mess up, and then you're going to keep trying, and you're going to get a little bit better each time you keep trying. Now, if you do the scared kid version of that, where you're going to make sure you're doing it right each time you attempt, your version of right is basically your 90%. Is that good? I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, let's say you're limit testing in your game. Somebody might know that's not going to work. But if you don't know that, it's not helpful. Like, you need to know that for sure. And they might flame you for that. But then, they
don't matter.
6 months comes around, and then they'll be playing like a little scaredy cat, and you'll be like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, that's happened to me a lot recently. And just, it still is like an issue in my, like, playing solo queue. Like, I kind of learned to be like, whatever. That's kind of part of my training right now. It's like to realize when someone just doesn't know something and just play off of that instead of assuming they know what they're doing. But it's like, you will pass them. And like, someone who's on that self-improvement grind and like trying to get better, they might get frustrated with your gameplay, but for the most part, they're just gonna understand. Like, like I said, some people are pretty can't think of the word, but they'll also be trying to improve, and they'll flame you for it because they're taking it very seriously and they don't think you are as well. But slash mute's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
I guess what I can think of is that you have to play with enough confidence or ego to make plays, and you have to be sure of what you're doing, but you can't never like not be able to take feedback, because some people will tell you something, like what you were saying before. Maybe some people are like telling you like what you're doing is like feeding or something, and you have to like, you can't just only take that and think about it, but you have to like, well, you can't just only think about it like that. You have to think about it yourself and why you're feeding, how to build off of that. But but
I was just saying, like, in my games, if someone goes like, why the hell did you do that? I will deliberately type and ask them, what should I have done differently? 9 out of 10 times, these people don't say anything. I'm like, so do you just not know the answer? Like, you're acting like you do, right? So it's like, if you like turn the script on them and be like, all right, so what's the right answer? Half the time they have no clue. They just see that you did something negative, died or like burned something you shouldn't have. And it's like,
and those are usually the people that are within that blame mindset of my teammate's doing wrong. So they want the perfect teammate, and they're going to get bad. They're going to get mad if they don't get the perfect teammate.
Those people are in the trap. They're never going to improve. Like, they're going to be stagnant. Like, maybe they got to where they are because they like did like the limit testing. Like, they tried, like, they were learning, but eventually they got to the point where their ego overtook them. Now they're just blaming everybody. They're going to be stuck forever. It's never going to improve for them. So it's just hard to balance that sometimes. So you have to be careful with that. Because I definitely had issues with that as well. But as long as you're self-aware and kind of more receptive to feedback, it should be okay.
Yep. That's it. This is a really long talk.
Yeah.
So this is part 1, right?
We're gonna do it annually. We're definitely gonna do this annually.
Like we'll
That's
come
like
back
God,
tomorrow,
please
right?
don't-
Part
No,
2.
no, no. We're definitely gonna do this annually. Maybe you guys come back. I'll let people choose if they come back, but it's gonna be like the top players. It would be cool if you guys come back and say like what you've learned and the difference and whatnot. But yeah, this is it. It should evolve as competition always evolves. Thank you.